Hello and welcome to the webinar. The topic today is the essential requirements for platform engineers and building internal developer platforms. This event is presented in partnership thanks to our friends at Portworx by Pure Storage, and we'll have a special guest on here from GigaOm. Now, before we get started, there's a few things that you should know about the format of today's event. First off, I should mention my name is Dave Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm glad to be your moderator and host for the webinar today. As always, we want these events to be educational, and we encourage your questions there in the questions pane of the audience console. Many of you have already said good morning, good afternoon. I saw one good morning from Alaska, California, Arkansas, Mississippi, across the United States and around the world. So we love to hear those kind of comments. But we also want your technical questions on the topic of the day, platform engineering and building internal developer platforms. So keep those questions coming as the discussion goes along here during the webinar. We've also got some great handouts available for download there in the handouts tab of your audience console. Starting off, the first one is the GigaOm radar, and it shows that Portworx is the #1 in Kubernetes data storage 4 years in a row. Make sure that you check out that link there, right there at the top of the handouts tab for more information. You can download the full GigaOm radar. And then the second one on the list there is a PDF that you can download entitled Enterprise Grade Kubernetes Storage for Platform Engineering. A very nicely done resource, well designed with a lot of great customer references and stories there, quotes at the end. So make sure that you check that out. It covers the full capabilities of the Portworx solution. And then at the end of the webinar today, it'll be my pleasure to announce the winner of our Amazon $250 gift card prize. If you're watching this on demand or recorded, of course, that drawing would have already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found right there in the handouts tab. All right, with that housekeeping information out of the way, I'm excited now to introduce today's expert presenters. Welcome, first off, to Joep Piscaer, who's the head of product marketing for Portworx by Pure Storage, and Joep Piscaer, who is a DevOps and cloud native analyst at GigaOm. Rajiv and Joep, it's great to have you on. I'll first hand it off to you, Rajiv. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our talk. With me today, I have Joep Piscaer from GigaOm. My name is Joep Piscaer, and I represent Portworx by Pure Storage. Joep, welcome to our talk on platform engineering.
Great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And, obviously, you and I have worked together in the past, Joep, and we talk about DevOps a lot and platform engineering a lot and, Kubernetes storage a lot. But I thought we can give our viewers a bit of a zoom into the world of platform engineering and how this function has evolved in all organizations going forward. It's quite a mainstream function for innovation, right? What's your perspective on this platform engineering team from your point of view?
Right. So I think platform engineering is still very close to DevOps. It's kind of a different way of achieving the same goals, the same outcomes, because DevOps really was about, lessening the distance between Dev and Ops, meaning we could deliver software, faster, quicker, more often, etc. Now, the operations part of this was always important, right? So, once you deliver a piece of software, it still has to run, and that's kind of the gap that platform engineering is closing. It's still about dev, it's still about ops, but it is about creating a service internally that allows development teams to deliver software and run it. So these platforms are called internal dev platforms, internal development platforms. And really what they do is they take what's out there in the market, combine it in a smart way, create a service out of it, quote unquote, so that a dev team can get started quickly, can deliver quickly, and can put their software into production and keep it there, keep it reliant, keep it secure, keep it performant.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. I'm glad you mentioned IDP because these internal dev platforms are so core to what a platform engineering team builds and continues to build every single day. And I think whenever I talk to, the head of platform engineering teams at multiple companies or platform architects who are very instrumental to making, architectural choices that go into an IDP, right? And making investments for their developer teams to actually have the tools they need to build the apps that are building the future of their organization. I think one thing that's always resonating to me is all platform engineering teams are looking to build sort of a practice that has a cloud operating model, and an experience that's sort of giving that on-demand self-service experience for all of the pieces of the dev platform. Could you talk a little bit about that as well? You mentioned speed, that's kind of related to having this cloud operating model.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there's so many elements to this, right? And if it were easy, it would have been a solved problem already. Unfortunately, it's not. We're in the middle of this. So yes, it's a fairly accepted rule. There's a fairly well thought out definition of all of this, but it's still in terms of maturity, it's still evolving. It's still very much changing year over year, which also means it's kind of hard to grasp. But what are the most important things that we should care about, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's infrastructure. Software still runs on hardware. Surprise, surprise. So we need to care about all of that. But it's kind of the layer cake that is built on top of it, like the public clouds have done with their service offerings, that we're now kind of seeing being replicated, and kind of, all of these different tools from that toolbox are being slotted into a very opinionated single platform that people can use. So instead of giving, people the public cloud toolbox and say, hey, go have at it, figure it out, we're now creating these platforms and making those decisions to make very opinionated platforms, the IDPs. And that means, we're still creating platforms that have very much the dev tooling aspect of it. So it's still very much aimed at developers, mm-hmm. and everything they need to put software into production. Mm-hmm. So that's CI/CD pipelines, that is Git repositories, that is observability to see how their software is doing, to make adjustments, to troubleshoot. It's very much, security scanning pre-production, so making sure images are safe and have been scanned to create SBOMs, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also very much the operational part, making sure that once we're in production, that we have the tooling to be performant, to be secure, to be compliant, to be able to do blue-green deployments, et cetera, et cetera. And so, like I said, the list goes on and on. This is very much still a work in progress as to what we need to put into an IDP, but we're at least kind of seeing the outlines of what used to be very much the pipeline CI/CD area, the very dev-focused, pre-production-focused area, now being combined with the productionizing of these apps, making sure that they actually are able to, to run in production and stay there.
Yeah, no, very well said. I agree. And I think the point of view that you're bringing is that, while they are building IDPs, they have to make sure that there's continuous app development happening by developers, and the security policies are still, dynamic and always available to make sure apps are built securely. I think one thing that we're also noticing, which is what you reemphasized, is that, the cloud actually taught us how you can bring services to consumers and users of services, right? And infrastructure is now not something that developer teams care about. They just expect it to be available, right? And that's what the cloud taught us. So having that operating model everywhere, whether it's for storage or networking or compute or even databases or for your app tooling and DevOps services to just do test and dev, or even for security, right, is just a standard expectation that is from every platform engineering team out there when they build IDPs. The other nuance that I want to add here, Joep, is because there is so much choice in choosing a cloud provider, or also due to sometimes availability of a cloud provider in certain regions, across the world, because most platform engineering teams actually build a global practice and an IDP that's global. They have to think about, residency needs, and also their data residency needs as it relates to service availability from a cloud provider, or even a specific on-prem vendor for infrastructure. So we've seen IDPs being built with this mentality of platform engineering that is, build once, run anywhere, and port anywhere, right? So it's this concept of, how do I build an IDP that is truly cloud neutral, right? No matter what investments or constraints I have from one region to the other in a specific cloud provider or an infra provider, the IDP should still deliver that same experience everywhere.
Yeah, I like that, because especially, no cloud is the same, right? So some clouds are better at databases, some clouds are better at, message queues, some other are better at bare metal services. So you don't necessarily want to just use one cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And very realistically, you're probably multi-cloud, you're using multiple clouds. But then kind of integrating the different pieces that you use from each of those clouds becomes an issue. And the IDP is uniquely positioned to help solve that problem, because now you're kind of creating an overlay, at least from a usability standpoint, so that all of these different services from all of these different clouds can be used in a single portal, making it so much easier to consume all of these services. Because that's kind of a thought that's been sticking in the back of my mind. We went from, on-prem to DevOps to platform engineering. Cloud is somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of an IDP is that, people that are knowledgeable make the choice for a certain set of features or a certain set of products for that specific area. Meaning that I, as a developer, no longer have to think about, okay, am I going to use, RDS as my database layer, or am I going to do something else? Am I going to use, S3, or am I going to use something else? All of these choices have been made already for me by the experts, so I can just get on with my work, right? And I don't need to provision a database from scratch. I can just point and click somewhere in the IDP, and then automatically a database instance shows up. And like that's kind of the magic of having an IDP, one, but also selecting the vendors that are able to deliver on those services, right?
Yeah, no, very well said. I agree. And, one other thing that I think platform engineering teams also care about is this, enterprise grade capabilities and really the platform's resiliency, because, these apps, while they may be containerized, they are truly, stateful apps. And, initially folks were building stateless apps on containers due to the nature of containers. But, Portworx has been the leader in this area for deploying stateful apps on Kubernetes, and helped multiple customers from all verticals achieve that sort of zero RPO when deploying Kubernetes apps. These modern apps have delivered some game-changing experiences, including in the pandemic, where vaccines were being delivered and at light speed, right? And that's just one example from the healthcare industry, because of what we went through due to COVID, and all the needs of the entire human population, where there was a need to accelerate bringing a new vaccine to the market. And we've helped multiple healthcare providers, build that kind of a platform, which is not only fast, has self-service, but also this resiliency where there's full fault tolerance, right? If one data center or storage goes down, your apps are still, unaffected, because that's where stateless comes in. So how important is these stateful applications, which are built on containers that are stateless, mm-hmm. right, by nature, when it comes to building an IDP from your point of view?
I think that's crucial. I mean, we started out with stateless apps on containers, both because it was technically what we could do, and especially the storage side of Kubernetes wasn't as mature back in the early days, but also we quickly realized that almost no app is stateless, because what do applications do? They process data, right? That's really, if you look at it, that's all they do, and that that makes infrastructure and storage specifically one of the bedrocks of all of this. Like all we do with cloud native, with cloud, with IDPs, with platform engineering, all of this simply comes down to having these resources available in a way that makes them consumable by the developer directly. And so that's why I love writing the work that I write for GigaOm, specifically around Kubernetes data storage, is because we take something very fundamental that I know, I've been trained as a storage engineer, and we apply it in a way that is very abstracted for the developer to consume directly. And so one of the biggest or the best examples of this is PDS, so Portworx data services, where you're just, as a developer, just able to deploy a database on storage somewhere, and it happens. You don't need to think about it. Like that for a developer is just fantastic, right? But it's super interesting to me to see that it's still very much dependent on these lower layers of actual infrastructure, but applied in a way that is self-service, on demand. It's easy to deploy. Someone has actually thought about it, someone who's the expert, and made sane default choices for security, for performance, for scaling, for whatever. And that expertise is kind of codified, put into the templates and into the defaults. So I, as a developer, no longer have to think about that. And that's kind of where I hope an IDP as a concept will evolve to, that vendors like Portworx provide their expertise, codify it, put it into software, and deliver it as part of an IDP, so that your expertise can now be used by whoever's using an IDP, right? That's kind of my ideal state, maybe 2 to 5 years or 2 to 3 years into the future, so that we can actually use all of this expertise, all of these different vendors have. That would be ideal.
Oh, lovely. I like how you framed it. And, thanks for bringing, data storage into the conversation. Obviously, that's very close to us and what we do here at Portworx, as we're building that platform as well to deliver these services to platform engineering teams and sort of help make the IDP successful for the data storage needs. So if I were to summarize kind of the 5 care-abouts of platform engineering teams based on our discussions for the users here and viewers, I think it's, if I may say, it's all about, building that cloud operating model, which is kind of neutral in the sense where whatever organizational choices are made by the CIOs or CTO teams to invest in multiple clouds or on-prem and hybrid environments, the IDP kind of supports that, bringing the same experience everywhere for infrastructure. And that operating model is common at the same time. All of the classic enterprise grade requirements around security, resiliency, and stateful apps that will be deployed on containers, all of those have to be remembered. And these are things that platform engineering teams will care about, including the newness, that platform engineering teams and developers need, right? Which is self-service access to everything, so they can do continuous app development, and also the flexibility to build once and run it everywhere, and also port it when necessary. So really enjoyed this conversation, Joep. And could you transition a little bit to kind of the criteria you used for Kubernetes data storage? The radars have come out, so I'm glad the viewers can download it and everything.
Absolutely. So again, we're still talking about storage, right? Even in a cloud native world. So we're kind of assuming things like, it has snapshots, it's performant, it's, it has some kind of data optimization technology or multiple of them in there. So a lot of them, we just assume are there because, it's still storage. That's kind of table stakes, right? But we do specifically look for certain features if we're talking about Kubernetes data storage solutions. And those are solutions that don't necessarily run on Kubernetes, although co-locating would be nice from an architectural point of view, makes it much more flexible, easier to deploy. But what we're specifically looking at is solutions that offer storage to Kubernetes environments. And so that means the integration between Kubernetes and the storage environment kind of has to go both ways. And that integration has to be top-notch so that the storage environment knows that they're talking to a Kubernetes cluster with, certain pods or certain storage classes, et cetera. And then kind of by extension, we need to have some kind of CSI compatibility for various reasons, cloning, snapshotting, et cetera. so that we can expose those functionalities that the storage platform already has directly to the Kubernetes users, to the developers. Because in a lot of cases, it's the developers that want to create a snapshot. And if they have to call someone or, file a support ticket that says, hey, go make me a snapshot, please, doesn't make sense, right? We want it to be self-service, on demand. And so that's why we look for these kind of integrations. And then naturally, this kind of extends into data replication as well. Yes, we assume data replication is part of the solution, but it hasn't been exposed to Kubernetes. Can we leverage those replication services directly from a Kubernetes, a YAML file or kubectl or whatever, so that the user itself, so the developer, can take advantage of those features instead of having to go through a storage admin. Lastly, kind of that extends naturally into data footprint optimization, so some kind of compression, dedupe, et cetera, because it's still storage. We assume it's able to be optimized to make for a better solution overall in terms of cost. And then we also very much look at telemetry, visibility, observability, insights, stuff like that from a couple of different perspectives. So firstly, we want to know that our storage infrastructure is healthy and we don't run out of physical space, et cetera, et cetera. The cloud solves part of it, of this, of course, but in an on-prem environment, that is still very important. But also we want to give information about the performance of applications specifically back to the user, back to the app developer. So having that layer of integration and visibility is also very important. And then lastly, and I'll touch on this a little bit because this whole webinar is about developer experience, but we take an overall look at how well the developer can interact with the storage environment directly or indirectly. Because again, that's kind of a key factor for successful adoption of specifically a storage solution for Kubernetes, because the user of Kubernetes is the developer and not necessarily the storage admin.
Understood. No, thank you. Thanks for re-emphasizing all of your evaluation criteria. And Portworx is very honored to be recognized by GigaOm amongst other players in the space. And we continue to focus on building our platform to serve all of these needs, and hope that we are recognized in the future as well, as we solve joint customer problems to bring stateful apps to market on Kubernetes storage, keeping all these requirements in mind for platform engineering teams. Joep, I would like to thank you for joining us today, and for everyone as well to listen to us in this webinar. If you want to download the cloud native storage and enterprise Kubernetes storage radars from GigaOm, please visit portworx.com and you'll see the link right there to download them. Thank you again, Joep.
You're welcome. It was fun.
Alrighty. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.